Hi everyone, Lynn here for Flying Unicorn, and today I'm sharing with you the Off the Page project, which is included in the February main kit from Flying Unicorn. I'm going to be sharing two faux techniques with you today, the first of which is a faux rusting technique. I actually got the idea and the inspiration from Andy Skinner, and below the video I will put a link to his original video on this rust technique that he's done. I've kind of changed up a few things because of the products that I had or didn't have, but still made it work. So what you're watching me doing right now is taping off the areas that I don't want to have the rusted technique on, which is basically the base. Then that will be more of a faux wood technique. Also, I'm sure that you probably saw that the base has been, it looks damaged. It's not. That's a distressing, and I will share that more with you as we move on in the video. Okay, so I'm just finishing up the taping right now, making sure I get in between all the letters. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to use some Liquitex Basics neutral gray value number 5 to cover the entire word. I'm going to go ahead and put on 2 full coats. No gessoing to begin with. It wasn't necessary. The paint will take care of it. So go ahead and do 2 full coats. I am using a permanent ink. You definitely don't want to use a water-based ink to do this technique. I'm also using Stampendous Andy Skinner stamps. The set is called Industrial. There's 3 stamps in the package, and I actually stamped with all 3 of them. Now I'm layering my stamps. I'm not looking to cover the entire gray areas. That's not going to happen anyways, but I do want to make sure that I keep layering and layering. I'm actually building up texture, and while it's not physical texture, it's more of a visual texture in the background for the next step that we're going to go ahead and do. So right now you're actually only seeing me use, one of the stamps, and you won't see me use the other 2 stamps in the set, but I'm just continuing on. I'm going to go ahead and stamp as much as I can, the word love, and that includes in between the letters themselves, going into all the nooks and crannies, and that's a little bit more difficult with a cling mounted stamp or rubber stamp. So I will pull out a Prima stamp, and I don't know the name of it. I will link it if I can find it. And I'm using this, it's a clear stamp, and the main reason that I went ahead and pulled out this stamp is specifically because I know I can get into the nooks and crannies with it. I'll get better coverage in those areas. There's some real tight spots in between the letters and inside the letters that I'm not going to be able to get full coverage with the Andy Skinner stamps. So this particular stamp will allow me to do that. Now it is a bit of a script stamp, but that doesn't really matter. What I'm looking for is the effect, not actually what's on the stamp. Once you're finished with your stamping, go ahead and make sure the ink is dry. And the next step is to add a rustic color over top. You do want something with some metallic. Here I'm using golden quinacridone nickel azo gold. You don't have to use that. You can use a rusted or rust metallic paint. You can make your own paint by using a red metallic with a yellow, or use a metallic gold, for instance, with a red. But anything that will give you a rust color will work. I should mention at this point that you definitely don't want to use a heavy-bodied paint here. You want something that's going to have transparency. I should mention that I did go ahead and add 2 coats of the golden paint. I do like it, but in hindsight, I wish I had only used one coat and just added a second coat here and there. The main reason for that is because with just one coat, you could see more dimension in the paints, specifically more of the yellow colors, and I actually preferred that look much better. The next step is to add a matte finish to the rusted areas. Normally rusted products aren't. They're a matte finish, not a gloss finish. And I did not have a matte varnish, so I did find in my stash and from a past Flying Unicorn kit some 13 Arts matte medium, and that does work. You're seeing me paint that on right now. It does look glossy going on, but it does dry with a matte finish, and only one coat was really necessary. The next step is to go ahead and do the wood finish. You can see that the base, as I mentioned before, has already been distressed. That's not how it was when it came from Flying Unicorn. It was actually very nice black finish, and I went ahead and distressed it. I did that using my craft knife, and I made some gouges, I made some lines, I also took out some chunks on the edges, and as well I took out my little tiny hammer and just beat the base of the word with it. So basically I ended up with variations with some of the black and some of the beige undercolor of the wood piece itself. Right now I'm going to go ahead and paint the entire base with a light brown paint. This is a Delta Ceramcoat Toffee Brown, and I'll just cover the whole base. I'm not looking for full coverage. You will see some of the black showing through. Once the light brown paint is dry, I'm going to go ahead and add a lighter gray paint over top. This is a Martha Stewart chalkboard paint. That was the only one I had in my stash. And I'm using a fan brush to put it on. If you're really good at doing a dry brush technique with a regular brush, then go ahead and use that. You don't want to cover all of the brown. You just want to go ahead and just basically give it striations is what you're looking for. So not full coverage, a light coverage, light hand with the actual paint. And you want to do all the areas that would be considered wood. Of course you want to let that dry, and the next step is to add another color over top. I'm using Viva Decor chalk paint in Cappuccino, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the light gray paint, which is to use a fan brush with very little paint on the brush and an even lighter hand, and go ahead and cover the areas that would be considered wood, or that I'm considering wood. This is going to add depth and dimension to your piece, and you do need the variation in color. So in some areas you see a tiny bit of black, in other areas you'll see the light brown and gray, and then the final color, which is the beige. And once all this dries, it actually looks like a piece of wood. The next step in finishing the faux wood technique is to make, I guess what you would call either wormholes or what looks like a hole left over from perhaps a rusty nail or something like that. And to do that, I'm using a very tiny brush with burnt umber paint from Liquitex Basics. I'm just filling in the indentations that I made with the hammer. And I'm not looking for perfect circles. I'm not even looking for perfect coverage. I'm just putting a tiny dab of paint into each of those indents. If you feel, and I did feel that I didn't have enough of those wormholes, I went ahead and just added a few, and you wouldn't know that there wasn't an indent there. The final step, and unfortunately I didn't film this, was to wrap a little bit of twine around some of my letters, and over top of that I went ahead and glued on some rusted stars from Debbie's.